So good morning and welcome to Monkhouse on Mondays. Today I have with me Jason Knight from Northwest Leicestershire. Good morning, Jason. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Dave. Yeah, hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, not too bad at the minute. I'm doing some running, doing a bit of exercise. Kids are keeping me busy as always. What about yourself? Because you're a swimmer, aren't you? So how are you coping?
Yeah, that's been really difficult for me. Like a lot of people that have been restricted in the terms of physical activity they do, I've had to adapt. So I tried running, particularly successful. I'm not really built for running. I had an injury, so I had to resort to power walking and cycling, which aren't the loves of my life. Swimming is the love of my life. It came as a welcome relief when they allowed open water swimming as part of the easing of the lockdown. So yeah, the first thing I did was got myself a wetsuit, and since then I've managed to get to the lake on 3 occasions, and I'm booked in over the next 3 weeks on at least 3 times a week. So hopefully I can lose some of this lockdown sort of midriff that I've had over the past few weeks.
Brilliant, good. Yeah, I've got a couple of potato issues, so I always trouble getting the wetsuit zipped up at the back, so I always have to have help. So, Jason, the reason I wanted to talk to you today was to get a local authority perspective on lockdown within leisure and open space management and things like that. So, what's lockdown involved for you guys within local authority, in particular, obviously, Northwest Leicestershire?
Yeah, and I suppose it's difficult for us, isn't it? Because we have our core services. That's what we concentrate on a day-to-day basis. But one thing lockdown has meant, being local authority, is we've had to diversify. So there have been things that we've had to do that we've not done previously. But I'll perhaps come on to that in a bit. I mean, the first thing we had to do was we had to take a decision in terms of the resources that we had and what services we could continue to deliver and what services we couldn't continue to deliver. Our chief exec was quite clear in her mandate, which was those staff that had underlying health conditions weren't going to come into work. If they could work from home, they worked from home. If they couldn't work from home, they didn't. They just went home to keep them safe. Feel it was a safe environment for them to come into. That impacted on a number of my teams. The leisure contract with everyone active. The government were, whilst they put in place lockdown measures, they never said anything about, at that time, restaurants, bars, areas where there could be social gatherings, leisure centres being included. I was very much an advocate of, I don't think we should keep leisure centres open. On the one hand, we're saying to all residents, socially distance yourself, keep safe, don't have social gatherings. We were closing some parks and open spaces to stop that from happening, but we were keeping our leisure centres open. The leisure contractors had issues around the financial side of things. They were trying to engage with us. So one of the first decisions we took before lockdown even came in was to close the leisure centres.
Right.
Well, sorry, that was after lockdown had come in, but it was prior to the government announcing closed. Yeah. So we instructed on the Thursday evening in advance of that for everyone active to cease trading with the effect and to close their facilities. On the back of that, we also have a number of community leisure facilities that we run in partnership with parish councils, with local schools. So we engaged with them, and they closed at the same time as well. So we weren't encouraging people to socially gather in one place. Without getting into the intricacies of that, whilst from a community leisure perspective, it wasn't a massive issue. Obviously, there were then ongoing conversations with our leisure partner around the support that we could then give them. And we at that time said we would support them in terms of the staff salaries that they have. But I accept we were in quite a fortunate position because we were less than 12 months into a 25-year contract. There'd been quite a large amount of investment into Hood Park Leisure Centre in Ashby, which was exciting in terms of the footfall that were coming through. We were well on the way to getting planning permission for a new build within the Colville area to replace the Hermitage Leisure Centre in Whitwick. So our take on that was very much that over the course of the 25 years of the contract, there was an adequate opportunity for us to reclaim back any sort of support that we gave to everyone active financially. So that was our stance, and I appreciate other people in different contracts with different terms left to run on it wouldn't be quite so fortunate as us. But that was our first decision. What services do we stop? Leisure centres closed, community leisure schemes closed, health and wellbeing team. Well, okay, no face-to-face classes. We're dealing with a lot of vulnerable groups, a lot of targeted groups. So our immediate discussion set focused on, well, how can we deliver the service differently? What can we do differently? So we very much looked at that digital offer. We looked to engage instructors who now would still potentially be paid because, again, that was the chief exec's desire that staff, even if they were at home, casual staff would still be paid based on the average they'd done over the previous 12 weeks. So some staff who were still delivering classes, either on YouTube or through Zoom, through that digital platform, but we had a number that weren't. So we utilised them to keep that engagement going with some of our vulnerable residents, our falls prevention. We phone them up on a weekly basis and ask how they can, and encourage them to continue to be physically active, which worked really, really well. So yeah, we were still utilising staff in that respect. Okay. Alongside that, we also spoke to everyone active around what are you doing to continue to encourage people to be physically active, and they had their own models in place, so we kind of left them. It was just a case of keeping in contact with them and having those discussions with them on a regular basis.
Good. Okay, so it sounds quite like a very flexible approach and a very quick approach as well, because one of my frustrations was everybody seemed to be waiting to be told to do things, rather than what appears you guys have done is actually looked and said, right, we're going to do something. So did you redeploy any of the Everyone Active team, the team that now run your contracted leisure centres?
That's an interesting question, Dave, because as you will know, staff who are furloughed, which Everyone Active did, cannot be redeployed in another area. However, what we did do is we did strike up an agreement with Everyone Active that they would allow us access to their staff who were prepared to volunteer their services in other frontline services. So as I mentioned earlier, when our staff with underlying health conditions were sent home, that massively impacted on my grounds maintenance team. It also on base services team. Corporately, we had a decision to make in terms of, okay, what are the key areas? What are the key service areas we need to deliver? Waste services was one of those areas. Straight away, my grounds maintenance team was depleted further because I lost a number of grounds maintenance team to ensure that service continued to be delivered. Fortunately, we had a number of staff come through from Everyone Active, which put us again in a far greater position. They had to be trained up, which took weeks to enable to mobilise. But once they were mobilised, I could then get my grounds maintenance team back. But alongside that, I think I mentioned earlier about the diversification from a local authority perspective. So one of the things we had to do was we had to set up a community hub, which involved in establishing that. And that took two strands. That was about ensuring that those people who were suffering with social isolation had regular contact. And it was about ensuring that those people that were the most vulnerable in society, sometimes included the shielded, but generally it was those people that couldn't use their neighbours to access shopping for them, couldn't get essential household items. We had to set up some kind of system so we could support them to get them those items. They would pay for them, generally go and do the shop and drop it off their house. So I lost a couple of the health and wellbeing team members to that, which obviously then detracted from that service. But at the time, they're still supporting them. That team was more of a priority. But again, we're quite fortunate in that we have a substantive health and wellbeing team. Whereas a number of authorities in Leicestershire is funded through the Sport and Physical Activity Commission plan houses, and apart from half a post. We did have to have negotiations at the time with public health colleagues, with colleagues at Leicestershire Rural Sport, because of the external funding implications of the staff that we were looking to redeploy within the hub. But they were really, really supportive. Public health basically said, well, as long as you can evidence there is a link with health improvements and health and wellbeing, which is quite easy when you're talking about social isolation and people not having essential items to live, then they were happy for those staff to be redeployed as well. So there was quite a bit of work that went off to ensure the sustainability of those services in the first instance. As those services became far more sustainable, the focus then moved back to recovery. Well, okay, we've stopped a number of services. How do we look to get those services back up and running? And what are the priority services whilst we're still doing that and delivering the hub at the same time? And now also we've got the track and trace service, which we don't know what that's going to look like. We've got to support, so we're going to have to put a resource for that. And do we continue to utilise existing staff to be able to deliver those additional services when we manage the impact on other services, which may mean we don't actually restore all services for a few months yet, or do we look to bring staff in externally to do that? So there are a number of options. We could also look to bring staff in externally to support our existing services, of course, as well. But I digress.
Well, no, that's absolutely fine, because the digression really links to what I'm really interested in is about what are you preparing for the post-lockdown to look like? Are you going to attempt to do anything differently? Are you using what you've learned to really have a bigger impact on some of those isolated communities you've just referred to?
I think we've got to, Dave. I think we've got to. I mean, one thing we've had to do throughout this entire process is interpret, and I say interpret because I don't think it's always been black and white, the guidance that has come out from government. I say guidance, again, it's a directive. And one of the prime examples of that is the utilisation of parks and open spaces. And it's always been a little bit grey. So in the first instance, we actually closed some of our parks off because we were having issues with antisocial behaviour. There were groups congregating in those areas. There were social gatherings. We then closed car parks because we wanted to reduce the likelihood of non-essential travel to those areas. Yeah. We then reopened all the parks and open spaces, again with some issues around antisocial behaviour, but we tried to manage that on the back of the government saying we want people to be able to access parks and open spaces. Then the restrictions were eased a little bit more around what actually various activities can take place. Only some were mentioned explicitly. So tennis was one that was mentioned explicitly. Yep. It was mentioned that play equipment and green gyms should remain closed, but there was nothing in there around the sort of your general multi-use games area, skate ramps, and I had a number of debates with colleagues from other authorities around Leicestershire. What are you doing? Well, we're keeping our skate ramps closed, we're keeping our Moogas closed at this moment in time. I was very much of the opinion, well, I think we should open them. You know, what the government are trying to advocate here is that people need to be active, providing people are following social distancing. Why would we not open skate ramps? Why would we not open Moogas? So again, we took the decision at that point to open everything from an open space perspective, with the exception of equipment. That process is going to continue in terms of the government guidance that comes out in terms of what we can open and how we manage that in terms of within the four walls of the facility, but also how we are creative in terms of what we now continue to deliver. One thing that's come through massively from this is the behaviour change towards physical activity. You see far more people being out, being physically active. They are utilising the outdoors, the open spaces. They are doing it as families. Whether that will continue or not, I don't know, because I appreciate a lot of people are furloughed, a lot of people are home, they've got that time. But I think people will be working far more from home now than they ever have done previously, and that will go for a number of months. So I think our job, our role from a physical activity perspective is how do we engage that behaviour change? How do we capitalise on that opportunity? Yeah. And certainly in terms of my community leisure, what I've said to them is, okay, we've got buildings there, and I want you to manage those buildings within social distancing guidelines and start to gear up for that. Talk me through the process of when somebody comes through the front door, how they're going to pay for their activity, how they're going to be 2 metres apart, how they're going to get into the sports hall for the fitness class, how they're going to socially distance through the fitness class, how are they then going to get out of the building. But community facility now, because if you're trying to exist as a community facility, you're not going to be able to do so because your membership levels are going to drop, because until consumer confidence is back and high, they're not going to come into the building. Some will, but not all of them. So you're now going to become community hubs. So how are we going to use those databases that we've got through our community hub, those most vulnerable people in those residents? How are we going to use those volunteer groups, another area which has grown massively over the past few weeks? How are we going to link all those volunteer groups and create spokes outside the hub to encourage people to be more active? How are we going to capitalise on that digital offer that is there? How are we going to link far more effectively with public health colleagues and GP surgeries to ensure we've got that triangulated, synergised approach? And we may generate some income from doing that outreach work. But more importantly, if we can engage those people who weren't currently physically active before and now are, we can engage those families, we can keep them active within those outdoor spaces. Once consumer confidence in utilising leisure facilities increases, we've got a ready-made market to come back into the facilities. So the financial pain should hopefully be short-term rather than long-term. So that's the kind of and now the community leisure team and the health and wellbeing team that I have are working far more closely together to have a far more aligned action business plan to be able to capitalise on the opportunities that are available. And they're meeting now on a fortnightly basis to talk through how they're going to do that. The conversations I've had with our leisure partner, Everyone Active, I've said to them, we're now looking longer term with them. We're in the process of trying to engage a consultant through the Support England offer to support us with contractual implications. They're going to be financial, they're going to be operational. What I don't want the leisure contracts saying to us, and we've got a great relationship with them, you've got to bear in mind, these are staff that I was line managing a lot of them just 12 months ago. I know them well. But it'd be very easy for any leisure contract, and I'm not saying this would happen, but very easy for any leisure contract to say, well, look, this is issues we've got to swim, this is issues we've got to learn to swim, these are issues we've got memberships, these are issues we've got fitness classes, this is how it's going to affect our income. So I've had exactly the same conversations with them and with the consultant we're looking to engage around how our contract was very much based on health and wellbeing and outcomes. Well, I see this as an opportunity for us to take it to the next level, and again, get outside the building, work with my health and wellbeing team more so than you have done over the past 12 months, link in with the community leisure team, which you haven't really done. So we've got a whole sort of systems approach across the entire district, focused just on buildings, but it's focused far more on outdoor space and the sustainable buildings when the opportunity allows in a few months' time.
Absolutely. And on that note of systems thinking, which I think is a conversation all by itself, that's really positive, particularly as the operator that you've currently got also has a very good brand of Everyone Health in order to tie into some of those things you've just talked about. Our 15 minutes is up, Jason. You've done a great job of filling the time. Thank you so much. So take care and thank you for your time. I'll see you soon.
No problem, Dave. Anytime. Speak to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.